Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dye with Dom. So on today's episode, we're going to be recreating the Ingrid unit, which is our highlighted bob unit that's on the site. So of course, we are going to be starting off with some raw hair, always raw hair. If it's not raw, just don't dye on it, please. And we will be parting it off. I do like to part my units if I know what the parting is going to be, or if it's just going to be like always the same. So that the color can be applied evenly on each side. If I don't, it doesn't really matter how I part it. It just depends on the look. But for this specific look, we are going to be parting her in the middle just to prep the unit. I like to start on my hair basically blown out. You don't have to if the hair is already pretty straight, but if you have like curly hair or something like that, I do like to make sure it's stretched out. It doesn't have to be bone straight. As you can see, this hair is not bone straight, but I do like to solidify that part and make sure the hair is pretty stretched out before I begin to apply the color. Once I have my parting solidified, I'm going to start with the bottom section, and I'm going to take out a couple tracks worth of hair. This unit has highlights throughout, so you want to keep the section relatively small but not like extremely tiny, because we do not need to do that. So I'll do like about 2 to 3 tracks, just depending where I am in the head. The further I go up, the less tracks I do at a time, but at the bottom we're just blending it in to begin with, so we're gonna do a little bit more tracks than usual. And of course we're going to be using Blondeme, but I'm also going to be using this Express 9 powder lightener. Normally I do not do that, but I was out of my Blondeme, so I had to do a backup. And this is a decent alternative if you really can't get your hands on the Blondeme. However, I definitely do recommend going with the better quality one if you can. I do have a link to where I purchase it from, so you guys can shop there as well. But it definitely makes a huge difference, so don't think that just because I'm using this is the one I recommend. I definitely recommend using a Blondeme or something closer equivalent to that. I always do a 1:2 ratio, so we're going to do 2 parts developer to 1 part bleach. That just gives me the perfect consistency. Sometimes I do play with it, especially when I'm using different bleach powders, but overall I want it to kind of be a little bit drippy, I guess you could say, but thick enough that it's going to stick onto the hair strands. You don't want it to be like super watery. So that is what I look for once I'm mixing my mixture. Now going in for the actual highlights, we're going to be weaving. I've shown this many times on my channel, but all that you're going to do is go in and out, up and down through the hair, picking and dropping the hair basically. And then once you have that hair in your hand, you're going to tease it. So I like to hold on to the hair lightly, bring the comb all the way down, and then push it back up to push those hairs all of the way. So this is going to create that dimension, and it's going to blend in the blonde with everything else. So you're not going to have these massive lines of demarcation. You're just going to have a nice blended color, and you won't have to do too much in terms of blending your roots in. Once I have that section, I'm just going to be applying the color, making sure you're applying it thoroughly and make sure all the hair is coated. You do not want to be stingy when it comes to this color. When you are bleaching wigs, you want to make sure every single strand is covered, saturated with the bleach mixture, so that your color comes out even and bright as you want it to be. This is a pretty simple color, so I'll really just be repeating the same weaving, teasing, and application process through the whole head. I do want to note that like when I put the mixture on there, I try not to put it all the way to the tippity top of the foil, just because the top of the foil is closer to the air, and if the air gets in, it's going to be cooler, which means that very top of your foil is going to process a little bit slower. So you don't want to have those like darker roots. Sometimes it is a little bit unavoidable, just depending on if your foil shift while they're processing, but you want to mitigate that as much as possible so you don't have to go in and fix anything by keeping the color inside the foil. You don't want it to be peeking out of the foil, because any hair that's peeking out of the foil is going to be a completely different color than the hair that's in the foil. And I don't think I mentioned this before, but for my mixture, I used 7 volume for the very bottom half. So about until I got maybe halfway or 2/3 of the way up, I'm using 7 volume to 10 volume, somewhere in there. And then once I got to like the halfway point, I started mixing in half 20, half 7. And then once I got to the very top, I did 20 volume. I do this because as I'm going up, the hair on the bottom is processing. That's why we do a lower volume developer there, so it'll process slower. But as you go up and as you gradually increase the volume, it'll allow all of the hair to process at the same time. So once you are ready to rinse it out, all the hair is going to be pretty much at the same point, and nothing's going to be super bright and something's going to be super dark. You'll just have it all even because you gradually went up with your developer. Now, I just wanted to highlight this because I do get this question a lot through my other videos. Once all the hair is in the foils, usually for this style maybe takes me an hour and a half. It really depends. I do start with very low developer. I start with about a 7 volume developer, but I leave it on up until I see that the hair is processed to where I want it to be. Now, you do have to go in and check periodically. I like to give it at least 30 minutes once I've finished every single piece of the foils, and then go and check where it is. I like to check the bottom where I applied the foils first, so I can make sure that is okay, and then I go in and check the other parts of the hair, the closer to the top where I applied it last, just to see where they are. Sometimes you will have to remove the bottom foils, either apply water to it or just simply wash it out so that they don't over process. But if you are quick enough, and once you get pretty good at it, you won't have to do this. But you just need to gauge how high you want it lifted, because it really just depends on the hair. Every hair will be different, no matter if it's raw or not. You still have to look at it, because it may be raw and have denser strands than somebody else did, and will take a little bit longer, but we'll still be able to reach to the level that you want it to be lifted. You just have to look at it and gauge whether or not the hair can handle that and whether it will keep its integrity. If you're not sure and you see that it's very blonde, just pull on the strands a little bit. If it's feeling rubbery, then you know it's gone too far. You do not want it to feel like a rubber band. You want it to still feel, tough like regular hair would if you're just pulling it. So just be cognizant of that. If you have really good raw hair, this shouldn't be a problem for you, especially if you're using the proper level of developer. You do not want to go higher than a 20 volume if you're doing a full head like this. You will run out of time. Trust me, you will. So just be mindful of that when you're doing it, and the time is really up to your hair. So I say at least 30 minutes to give it to lift to like a higher level blonde, but it may be more, it may be less, just depending on your process, depending on how hot it is in the room. There are a lot of different factors, so you just need to be able to check and know when to take it out and when to just leave it alone. And I didn't show it here, but I just went in with a little bit of T27 toner just to tone out the blonde a little bit. This one is a pretty simple process, so I didn't show that. I'm just going to wash out the bleach and mix up the toner and apply it just like you regularly would. And that's pretty much it. And in the other video I filmed for this unit, you'll see me cut and style this unit. So definitely go check that out if you want to see that. And that's pretty much it for this video. So I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.